It says I'm live. So I just took a shower, so my hair's still soaking wet. But yeah, today is day 50, which is pretty cool. I just failed to record the last one because there's someone broadcast, and I forgot to say don't broadcast. So now that I'm covered on that, um, I guess I'll get started. We'll be reading chapters 9 through 12, and I just like it with being multiples of 4 so much. It says someone's joined back again. Okay. Deception by Gibeon. And all the kings heard about Jericho and Ai, who were west of Jordan in the hill country, in the Judean foothills, and all along the coast of the Mediterranean Sea toward Libyan. The Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. They formed a unified alliance to fight against Joshua and Israel. When the inhabitants of Gibeon heard that Joshua had done to Jericho and Ai, they acted deceptively. They gathered provisions and took worn out sacks on their donkeys and old wineskins cracked and mended. There were old patched sandals on their feet and threadbare clothing on their bodies. Their entire provision of bread was dry and crumbly. They went to Joshua in the camp of Gilgal, and they said to him and the men of Israel, "We come from a distant land. Please make a treaty with us." The men of Israel replied to the Levites, "Perhaps you live among us. How can we make a treaty with you?" They said to Joshua, "We are your servants." Then Joshua asked them, "Who are you and where do you come from?" They replied, "Your servants have come from faraway land because of the reputation of the Lord your God. We have heard of his fame, and all he did in Egypt, and all that he did to the two Amorite kings beyond the Jordan, King Sihon of Heshbon and King Og of Bashan, who was in Asheroth. So our elders and our inhabitants of the land tell us, take your provisions with you for the journey, and go meet with them and say, we are your servants. Please make a treaty with us. This bread of ours was warm when we took it from the houses as food on the day we left it come to you. But see, now it's dry and crumbly. These wineskins were new when I filled them, but see, they are cracked, and they are from an extremely long journey. The men of Israel took some of their provisions, but did not seek the Lord's decision. So Joshua established peace with them and made a treaty with them to let them live. And the leaders of the community swore an oath to them. Gibeon's deception discovered. 3 days after making the treaty with them, they heard the Gibeonites were their neighbors living among them. So the Israelites sent out and reached the Gibeonite cities on the third day. Their cities were Gibeon, Shephirah, Baroth, and Kiriath Jearim. But the Israelites did not attack them because the leaders of the community had sworn an oath to them by the Lord, the God of Israel. And the whole community grumbled against the leaders. All the leaders answered them, "We have sworn an oath to them by the Lord, the God of Israel. Now we cannot touch them. This is how we will treat them. We will let them live, so that no wrath will fall on us because of the oath we swore to them. They will also let them live." So the Gibeonites became woodcutters and the water carriers for the whole community, as the leaders had promised. Joshua summoned the Gibeonites and said to them, "Why did you deceive us by telling us you live far away from us, when in fact you live among us? Therefore you are cursed and will always be slaves, woodcutters and water carriers for the house of my God." The Gibeonites answered him, "It was clearly communicated to your servants that the Lord your God had commanded his servant Moses to give you all the land and destroy all the inhabitants of the land before you. We greatly feared for our lives because of you, and that is why we did this. Now we are in your hands. Do to us what you think is right." This is what Joshua did to them. Israelites, and they did not kill them. On the day he made them woodcutters and water carriers, as they are today, for the community and the Lord's altar at the place he would choose. Chapter 10. The day the sun stood still, Adoniah Sedek at Jerusalem heard that Joshua had captured Ai and completely destroyed it, treating Ai and the king as he had Jericho and its king, that the inhabitants of Gibeon had made peace with Israel and were living among them. So Adoniah and Sedek and his people were greatly alarmed because Gibeon was a large city, like one of the royal cities. It was larger than Ai, and all its men were warriors. Therefore King Adoni Sedek of Jerusalem sent word to King Ahim of Hebron, King Piram Jarmuth, King Japhia of Lachish, and King Debri of Elgon, saying, "Come up and help me. We will attack Gibeon, because they have made peace with Joshua and the Israelites." So the 5 Amorite kings, the kings of Jerusalem, Hebron, Jarmuth, Lachish, and Elgin, joined forces, advanced with all their armor, besieged Gibeon, and fought against it. When the men at Gibeon sent word to Joshua in the camp of Gilgal, "Don't give up on your servants. Come quickly and save us, help us. For all the Amorite kings living in the hill country have joined forces against us." So Joshua and all his troops, including his best soldiers, came from Gilgal. The Lord said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid of them, for I have handed them over to you. Not one of them will be able to stand against you." So Joshua caught them by surprise, after marching all night from Gilgal. The Lord threw them in confusion before Israel. He defeated them in great slaughter at Gibeon, chased them in through the ascent of Beth Horon, and struck them down as far as Eseka and Makkedah. As they fled before Israel, the Lord threw large hailstones on them from the sky, along with the ascent of Beth Horon, all the way to Azekah, and they died. More of them died from the hail than the Israelites killed with the sword. That's kind of cool and interesting. On the day the Lord gave the Amorites over to the Israelites, Joshua spoke to the Lord in the presence of Israel. Sun stand still over Gibeon, and moon over the valley of Ajalon. And the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, until the nation took vengeance on its enemies. Isn't it written in the book of Ishar? So the sun stopped in the middle of the sky, and delayed its setting almost a full day. There's been no day like it before or since, when the Lord listened to a man, because the Lord fought for Israel. Then Joshua and Israel returned to camp at Gilgal. Execution of the 5 kings. Now the 5 defeated kings had fled or hidden in the cave at Makkedah. It was reported to Joshua that the 5 kings had been found. They are hiding in the cave at Makkedah. Joshua said, "Roll large stones against the mouth of the cave, and station men by it to guard the kings. But as for the rest of you, don't stay there. Pursue your enemies and attack them from behind. Don't let them enter their cities, for the Lord your God has handed them over to you." So Joshua said, and the Israelites finished inflicting a terrible slaughter on them until they were destroyed. Although few survivors ran away from the fortified cities, the people returned safely to Joshua and the camp at Makkedah, and no one dared to threaten the Israelites. Then Joshua said, "Open the mouth of the cave, bring those 5 kings out of there." That is what they did. They brought the 5 kings to Jerusalem, Hebron, Jerath, Lachish, and Eglon to Joshua out of the cave. When they had brought all the kings to him, Joshua summoned the men of Israel, who said to the military commanders, who all men of Israel, military commanders who had accompanied him, "Come here and put your feet on the necks of these kings." So the commanders came forward and put their feet on their necks. Joshua said to them, "Do not be afraid or discouraged. Be strong and courageous, for the Lord will do all this to the enemies you fight." After this, Joshua struck them down and executed them. He hung their bodies on 5 trees, and they were there until evening. At sunset, Joshua commanded that they be taken down from the trees and thrown into the cave where they were hidden. Then the large stones were placed against the mountains of the cave, and all the stones are still there, or left there. Conquest of the southern cities. On that day, Joshua captured Makkedah and struck it down with sword, including its king. He completely destroyed it and everyone in it, leaving no survivors. He treated the king of Makkedah as he had the king of Jericho. Joshua and all Israel with him crossed from Makkedah to Libnah and fought against Libnah. The Lord also handed its king over to Israel. He struck it down, putting everyone in it to the sword. He left no survivors in it. He treated Libnah's king as he had the king of Jericho. From Libnah, Joshua and all of Israel with him crossed to Lachish. They all laid siege and attacked it. The Lord handed Lachish over to Israel. Joshua captured it on the second day. He struck down, putting everyone in the sword, just as he had done to Libnah. At that time, King Hiram of Gezer went to help Lachish, but Joshua struck him down along with all his people, leaving no survivors. Then Joshua crossed from Lachish to Elgon, and all of Israel with him. They laid siege to it and attacked it. On the day they captured and struck it down, putting everyone to the sword. He completely destroyed it that day, just as he done to Lachish. Next, Joshua and Israel with him went up from Elgon to Hebron and attacked it. They captured it and struck it down with its king, all his villages, and everyone to the sword. He left no survivors, just as he had done to Elgin. He completely destroyed Hebron with everyone in it. Finally, Joshua turned toward Debir and attacked it, and all of Israel was with them. He captured it, its kings, and all its villages. They struck them down with the sword, completely destroying everyone in it, leaving no survivors. He treated Debir and its kings as he treated Hebron, as he treated Libnah and its king. So Joshua conquered the whole region, the hill country, the Negev, the Judean foothills, and the slopes, with all their kings, leaving no survivors. He completely destroyed every living being, as the Lord, the God of Israel, had commanded. Joshua conquered everyone from Kadesh Barnea to Gaza, and all the land of Goshen as far as Gibeon. Joshua captured all these kings and their land in one campaign, because the Lord, the God of Israel, fought for Israel. Then Joshua turned with all of Israel to the camp at Gilgal. Chapter 11, halfway through. Conquest of the northern cities. When King Gibeon of Hazar heard this news, he sent a messenger to King Joab of Madian, kings of Shuram and the Ishapesh, and the kings of north of the hill country, the Arabah south slopes, south of the Cheretha, the Judean foothills, and the slopes of Dor, to the west the Canaanites, and the east and the west, and the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, and Jebusites, and the hill country, the Hivites, foothills of Hermon, and the land of Mizpah. They went out with all their armies, a multitude of numerous as the sand on the seashore, along with a vast number of horses and chariots. All these kings joined forces. They came and camped together at the waters of Merom to attack Israel. The Lord said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid of them, for at this time tomorrow I'll cause all of them to be killed before Israel. You are to, you are to hamstring their horses and burn their chariots." So Joshua and his troops surprised them at the waters of Merom and attacked them. The Lord handed them over to Israel, and they struck them down, pursuing them as far as the greater Sidon and Mizrethoth-maim, and to the east as far as the valley of Mizpeh. They struck them down, leaving no survivors. Joshua treated them as the Lord had told them. He hamstrung their horses and burned their chariots. At that time Joshua turned back, captured Hazar, and struck him down, its king, with a sword, because Hazar had formerly been the leader of all these kingdoms. They struck down everyone in it with a sword. They completely destroyed them. He left no one alive. Then he burned Hazar. Joshua completely captured all these kings and cities and struck them down with the sword. He destroyed them as Moses, the Lord's servant, had commanded. However, Israel did not burn any of the cities that stood on their mounds except Hazor, which Joshua burned. The Israelites plundered all the spoils and cattle for these cities for themselves. They struck down every person with the sword until they had annihilated them, leaving no one alive, just as the Lord commanded his servant Moses. Moses commanded Joshua. That is what Joshua did, leaving nothing undone that the Lord had commanded Moses. Summary of the conquest. So Joshua took all his land, the hill country of Negev, the land of Goshen, the foothills of the Arabah, the hill country of Israel and its foothills, from Mount Halk, which ascends to Seir, as far as Baal-Gad and the valley of Lebanon at the foot of Mount Hermon, captured all the kings and struck them down, putting them to death. Joshua waged war with all these kings for a long time. No city made peace with Israel except the Hivites who inhabited Gibeon. All of them were taken battle, for it was the Lord's intention to harden their hearts so they would engage Israel in battle, but completely destroyed them without mercy and annihilated them just as the Lord commanded Moses. At that time Joshua proceeded to exterminate the Anakim from the hill country, Hebron, Debir, and Nab, and all the hill country of Judah and Israel. Joshua completely destroyed them with their cities. No Anakim were left in the land of the Israelites, except for some remaining in Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod. So Joshua took the entire land, keeping with all the Lord told Moses. Joshua then gave it as inheritance to Israel according to their tribal allotments. After this, the land had rest from war. Territory east of the Jordan, chapter 12. The Israelites struck down the following kings, and the land took possession of their land beyond the Jordan to the east and from the Arnon River to Mount Hermon, including all the Arabah eastward. King Sihon of the Amorites lived in the Heshbon. He ruled over Ayer in the rim of the Arnon Valley, along with the middle of the valley and half of the Gilead up to the Jabbok River, the border of the Amorites. There, Arabah east of the Sea of Shinnah, the Sea of Arabah, that is Dead Sea, eastward through Beth Jeshimoth and southward below the slopes of Pisgah. King Og of Bashan and the remnant of Rephaim lived in Ashtaroth and Edrei. He ruled over Mount Hermon, Salikah, and Bashan, up to the Geshurite in the Maacathite border, and half of the Gilead to the border. King Sihon of Heshbon. Moses, the Lord's servant, and the Israelites struck them down, and Moses, the Lord's servant, gave the land as inheritance to Reubenites, Gadites, and half the tribe of Manasseh. Territory west of the Jordan. Joshua and the Israelites struck down the fallen kings in the land beyond the Jordan to the west, from Baal-Gad in the valley of Lebanon to Mount Halak, which descends towards Seir. Joshua gave their land as an inheritance to the tribes of Israel according to their atonements. The hill country, the Judean hills, the Arabah, the slopes, the wilderness, and the Negev, the lands of the Hivites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, all the king of Jericho, the king of Ai next to Bethel, one. It says one next to every single one of these. I'm not really sure what that means. Pick it up. Like it says one in rows. So I'm gonna read it how I see it. The king of Jerusalem won, the king of Hebron won, and the king of Jarmuth won, the king of Lachish won, the king of Eldron won, the king of Gezer won, the king of Debir won, the king of Geder won, the king of Hormel won, the king of Arad won, the king of Libanoth won, the king of Adullam won, the king of Makkedel won, the king of Ethel won, the king of Tapaliah won, the king of Ever won, the king of Aphek won, the king of Lashurim won, the king of Madam won, the king of Hazor won, the king of Shimron Maron won, the king of Ashaph won, the king of Tanach won, the king of Megiddo won, the king of Kadesh won, the king of Jokneah and Carmel won, the king of Dor and Nephegah Dor won, the king of Goliam and Gigel won, the king of Tirzah won, the total number of all the kings, 31. There we go. So that is all the reading for today. So it starts out in chapter 9, talking about Gibeon subduing Israel by pretending to be a faraway place, and so they made a treaty with them. They're actually next door to them, and they're supposed to be destroyed. And so they tricked them, and so they had a peace treaty. And then they discovered Gibeon's deception, and so they're mad at them, and so they all became like woodcutters and water workers, they became slaves, water carriers. Then it talks about the day the sun stood still. Some people started fighting them, and Joshua spoke to the Lord. The sun stand still over Gibeon and moved over the valley of Adullam, and God made the sun stand still, and the moon stopped. And so that's pretty cool. And it delayed for almost a full day, where the sun stood still, the moon stood still without moving. Yeah, so well, not really the sun was moving. It's more like the earth spinning, I guess, around it to make it look like it was moving. I mean, you understand it. And so, yeah. And then talks about the execution of the 5 kings. And how they all went into a cave, and so they rolled the stones over and then they came and attacked all the surrounding people that were fighting. And then eventually they killed all the 5 kings, and they hung them from trees. and they like covering rocks. Talks about the conquest of northern cities, and it's just summarizing their conquest. It talks about the territory from the east of the Jordan, territory of the west of Jordan, and then it starts naming a bunch of kings with the number 1 beside them, and it says the total number of all the kings. I don't really know what that's supposed to mean. But yeah, that is all for today. If you had a good day so far, have a great rest of your day. Remember, God loves you, and goodbye.